Hey everyone. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can build a cohort analysis table, a cohort analysis chart within Lucas Studio. But this is actually taken from Shopify data. So Shopify stores a cohort analysis chart. If you have been into Shopify, you know that there is a cohort analysis chart at the back end of Shopify store. So that data has been taken into Looker Studio, and that has been done via BigQuery. And once that's done, this Looker Studio cohort analysis chart has been created. So if I just click on it here, we will see on the right-hand side, if you're a little bit familiar with Looker Studio, you know that there's such a thing called a data source. So you can see there's this little BigQuery sign here where there's a table in BigQuery, which is called Shopify cohort table. And this type of chart that's being used here is called a table with heat map. So it's just a table. Of course, we can do all kinds of visualizations, but the idea here is to show you the connections and how to get started with the process, and then we'll talk a bit about cohort analysis and the table itself. So let's go through the agenda quickly. So first of all, we're going to look at the nature of the schema of the Shopify data that needs to be available in the BigQuery table for this to be, you know, sort of ready for creation of a cohort analysis chart within Looker Studio. We'll also discuss a little bit about how to get the data into BigQuery in the first place. So this is a process called extraction, transformation, and load. That's a very detailed topic, so we'll just touch upon that and show you a very small example how to get started with it. But it also has very technical components like DBT, and also we'll probably cover that later on separately. Then we'll talk about the query that's going to be run within BigQuery. Then how to take it to Looker Studio and start working on it. And then we're going to talk a bit more on the table itself. So first things first, the nature and schema of the Shopify data. So I'll just give you a snapshot of how the BigQuery thing looks like right now. So I'll just let it load. So the way it works within BigQuery is that you have a particular project, and within that you have, or you rather, yeah, you have a particular project, and within that you have a lot of data sets, and within that you have multiple tables. So as you can see here, that there is this project which is called, which is this particular project ID, and within that called CDX reporting, there's a lot of tables here, a lot of data sets here. So there's a bunch of queries, and then there are a lot of data sets, and within each of these data sets, there are tables. So this is a particular um, table which is created within this data set called analytics, right? And as you can see, this is the Shopify orders table. And this table is actually the one which has been used in order to extract a particular cohort analysis table, and that has been done within BigQuery. I'll come to that in a moment, but it is important to know the schema. The schema that we have is, these are the field names, and of course, Shopify has a lot more data. We have chosen to extract only what was required for us. We have done this using our tool. As you can see here, there's a little name appearing here called Airbyte. So that's the third-party tool for that ETL extraction process. I'll just give you a quick overview of how to get started with that. But like I said, it's too involved a process to get everything in one video. But this is the table schema. So there's going to be an account name. The way we have used it, there's order ID, order numbers, whether there's a subscription, customer details, and then date of creation, the source. So the source is, the platform basically, and in this case, it's only Shopify. And then there is some revenue related data, price, subtotal price, discounts, taxes, and so on and so forth. So this is the core source table using which we are going to try and using which we're going to create the cohort table. And we obviously ran a query from here, and I cannot show you the inside the table because of data confidentiality, and I can't show you the exact query. I'll just make simple modifications to it wherever necessary to protect confidentiality. Otherwise, it will be the same query which you can use for your own purposes. By the way, that will be specific to BigQuery because even though it's basically on, based on SQL, but there are so many versions of it, and BigQuery has a specific format in which the SQL will run. So that's something that we will also have to keep in mind. So I'll just scroll down in this section now. So that this is the section where it's a breakdown. As I said, so there is a particular project, and within that there's a data set, and then finally the table from which this has been extracted. So this is where it is being extracted from, and you can see immediately what's being tried here is to identify the first purchase date for each customer. So that's the whole point of a cohort table, right? So you try to identify the first purchase date. Based on that, you try to identify the cohort. And so that has been done using, first of all, the minimum of the order creation date, and then we use this date truncation to truncate the date to the start of the month. So we want it to be the start of the month, as you can see, right? And that's why the output table is going to look in this format. So it's going to be the start of every month, as you can see, 1st of January, then the 1st of February, and then the customer IDs. So the customer IDs will be assigned to, each customer ID is being assigned to a single cohort. The next step in the query is to compute the revenue for each cohort over time, right? And so then so we start creating cohort revenue, and that is, for that we select the cohort month, which has already been created, right? And then we have the revenue month, and there we are. And once the date has been, the revenue month is basically the truncated date, and then we have the sum total of the price, the total price. The total price is basically what gives the revenue from the Shopify orders table. So these are the aliases, as you can see, and these will be used later on. And so who is the alias for this particular original Shopify orders table, which is where we are taking the total price from. And then we are joining it from, with the customer ID details, right? And that's been grouped by the cohort month and the revenue month. So this is how it now looks like, and we are already starting to see is, so of course this output is not getting generated. This is just to understand every section of the query, but this just joins the first purchase table with the main orders table. And so basically what's happening here is there are two tables which are working within this particular query. Okay, so first a table is getting created, and then you join it with another table, and then you extract the revenue month, and then compute the total revenue, and then group them together by cohort month and revenue month, as you can see here. Okay, so you have the cohort month and you have the revenue month. We'll see in a second why. And then you have to basically choose the, you rather have to assign the month number from the start month, right? And that you can do through this one, date difference, and then you're choosing the difference of the revenue month and the cohort month. Okay, and this is getting the alias as month number. So once that happens, this is the example output from it. So you have the cohort month revenue, and then you assign a month number from it. And finally, you have the pivot table. This is the pivot table because you obviously want it to be aggregated for every single cohort month. And once that's done, you can see that all you're doing is summing it up whenever there's equal to 0. So you can have multiple zeros here, as you can see, obviously, because it's the same month appearing twice. But you don't want that. You want to aggregate it. And of course, for that, you use the pivot table. And the pivot table is done using this format here. So you're summing it up whenever the month is equal to 0, and then it's going under month 0, right? There you go. And that's pretty much it. That's obviously happening from 0 to 11 because you're having 12 months. And so basically the final output from this will be like this, where you have the cohort month, then you have all the 12 months here. So this is the starting month. The revenue for the starting month's revenue for this particular month was this, right? And then how much revenue was generated from that particular cohort for the other months. So that is the customer revenue cohort. Very simple version of the cohort analysis table. There can be many other ways you can generate cohort analysis, many other metrics that you can choose for cohort. But this is the first structure that we have shown here. So it identifies the first purchase, calculates the revenue from those customers, computes the time difference, and transforms it through pivot table into a cohort analysis table. Then we can also have a cohort retention analysis table, and we'll jump right into the difference first. And there's not much difference here. This tracks customer retention, this tracks revenue trends. This is the output as it will look like. There's a cohort month, and then there are individual months, month 0, month 1, month 2. This is, for instance, in this query, it has been done up to 5 months because usually, I mean, customer retention doesn't happen too much beyond that. But again, it depends entirely. Some businesses might. So the query just has to be updated accordingly. So as you can see here in this query, the pivot table has been only done up till the 6th month. Okay. Other than that, it's very similar. A major difference here is the use of distinct for customer ID, right? So that has been done, and you can see the distinct on the number of orders. And here, orders should be included. And in this case, the customer has been counted once per month. And the sum total of the total price is giving you the total revenue. And it's the count of distinct customer ID, which is giving you the unique customers. Revenue per cohort per month, whereas this is active customers per cohort per month. So this is the major difference, because in case of retention, you are obviously just focusing on the customer IDs. That's the major metric which you can just manipulate in order to get your customer retention. So these are the two main examples that I've shown here. We'll come to some examples of how to read a cohort analysis table, but I want to also first talk about a couple of other points here. So we have talked about the nature of the schema of the Shopify table. So how to get that table into or that data into BigQuery in the first place is through the use of third-party ETL tools, right? So we just mentioned in passing about Airbyte. So here's a tool, Airbyte, and Airbyte is nothing but and this is like a dummy account. This is an ETL tool, okay, and or rather primarily does the extraction and loading. The transformation is something you'll have to often do separately. So there are technologies for doing that, because it's DBT, um, which are there. And again, sometimes depends also on the source of the data. There are specific technologies for the data source that we talk about. So if it's GA4, then there is specific technologies available within the query to tackle GA4 data. But as you can see here, if you look at the right-hand side, this is there are two sections here. One is the connection, and another is the destination. Or rather, the connection is the final one where it's all clubbed together. But there's a source and there is a destination within any such ETL tools. And if you look on the right-hand side, there's a great setup guide. So I actually made a very similar video. If you want to go through this entire step, where I did a full connection, and I also ran some data analysis within BigQuery itself. This was for a data set on open exchange rates that I've done some time back. I'll leave the link of that video in the description. You can go through that one. That will be easier for you probably, because here's where I'm just giving you a quick overview, right? So on this right-hand side, whether you're in the sources or the destinations part, that was using Fivetran, by the way. That's another tool. It looks so similar, by the way. And if you just jump into the right-hand section here, you'll get a lot of ideas about how to get started with this. It's not super difficult, but it's not super easy either, to be honest, because it can get complicated. There's going to be, I often encounter a lot of errors from time to time whenever I'm trying to do this, setting up this connection. And that's because there are a lot of steps. At the connection level, at the source level, rather, there's not much. You just have to give the source name, the Shopify store name here, or the source name, of course, is Shopify. You have to choose the source from a list of different connectors. There's so many different connectors you can have with Airbyte and other similar tools. And this is going to be the Shopify store name, which is with basically the my store, my Shopify.com. So this is the my store part from that URL. You can jump into Shopify, the admin section, and in the general settings, there's in the general part, there's actually a store name that's given there, or you can just grab it from the URL, just like it's mentioned here. And then you also have to create a custom app at the back end of the store. You should have the ability to develop apps within the apps and channels settings in the Shopify store backend. And from there, you have to create that private app, or rather a custom app as they call now, and then you have to grab the API key from there. You will also have to configure it properly, by the way. And yeah, once you do all the configurations for what kind of data you need to extract from Shopify store, and then you just grab the API key and you put it here. So that's pretty much it. You can test the source here, and then it will start working. And then there's also the destination. And for destination, for instance, from the list has been chosen BigQuery, as was the case here. And within BigQuery, there's also a list of steps. It's a more complex case, of course, for BigQuery. You have to grab the project ID, you have to give a location, the default dataset ID. You should be selecting, for instance, one of these loading methods. You have to give the service account key in JSON format. This will be a file that gets downloaded. I'll just show a couple of these steps, how it actually works and the kind of complexity that is involved. It's not super technical. It's not like in order to do this setup, you have to do coding, but you will have to, that the major technical part comes later, but this is no less technical actually because it can be pretty complicated. So you have to jump into my project. You have to get the, or not your project specifically where you want to set up the data set, grab the project key from there, the dataset key, the project key, and then you have to create a data set here. So this was the previous example that I was talking about. You see Fivetran, and I created, sort of these data sets within BigQuery first, and then basically added the dataset name here or the dataset ID. As you can see, you have to give the dataset ID. And so this is how we can do that. So for instance, this was created here, this data set. And again, this is just dummy work, and you can copy the data set ID from here. And there are so many other steps that you have to actually go through in order to set up this part of the connection with BigQuery from within Airtable. You will have to go to, if I jump back to BigQuery again, you will have to go to, first of all, you need the billing account setup, by the way. So this entire process is not free. So there are two elements here which are paid. One is the connector tool, which is like Airbyte. The second is that you'll have to have a billing account, and for querying, for storage, you'll have to pay from BigQuery. Okay, so this is the data warehouse. So it's not a free process, and therefore this is not a process which is reasonable for smaller businesses. This is generally better if you are, at least spending something like 100,000 or something like that. But it depends. I mean, different sizes of businesses have different kinds of needs. They have different kinds of visions. It's great to actually, and I'm talking about just mom and pop, very small businesses. That level of business probably don't require it, but depending on your definition, there are a lot of small businesses also which can definitely profitably and very, very fruitfully make use of data warehouses and the data transfer processes that I'm talking about. So you'll have to jump into places like cloud storage. You have to go to buckets. You have to go to settings and make some, give uh, cloud storage admin rights by going to IAM. You have to create a service account. So there are a lot of steps here involved. All of these steps are actually laid out, in this part here. As you can see, creating HMAP key, granting the storage object admin role, BigQuery, cloud storage bucket, and there comes a service account which has to be downloaded in the form of JSON. That's going to be a JSON a text file with JSON coordinates. Just copy the entire thing, put it here. So these are the kind of steps that are involved. I cannot show you all the details. Like I said, it's relatively longer, but this particular part was covered in my other video, so definitely go check out that. And once this is done, you should have something like this ready. So the whole point of talking about the previous part was to show you how you can arrive at this part here. So you can arrive at this sort of a table structure with this kind of a schema. And once this is there, then upon this, you have obviously the field names that you are using. And using that, then you can run the query that I just spoke of. And once you run that query, the cohort table gets created within BigQuery. So that is the first leg of the journey that's been completed. Now comes the visualization part. For the visualization part, what you can do two things. One, you can, once you have a table ready, so for instance, this table is ready, right? So within BigQuery, you can actually open it directly from Looker Studio, as you can see here. So this is the other great thing that BigQuery has done now, made things so much easier. You can connect it directly with Sheets or with Notebooks, which is Python Notebooks, which is in Colab, or you can do it with Looker Studio. Or if you have a Looker Studio which is pre-built already, you can just choose it as a data source. Okay, you need to have the right kind of permissions and access rights, of course, in order for you to be able to do that. So like in this case, where for this table, as you can see, there's the Shopify cohort table, which is basically another table that's been created within BigQuery. And that right is there. And here comes the part. What are the things that you need to choose? So first of all, already I mentioned that this has to be a table with heat map. That's the kind of chart that was chosen. And then you have to choose the right kind of dimensions, right? So you have to choose date range dimensions. So there should be cohort one. That's the date range dimension. Check the name in your case, the names of the field. Again, that's repeated as the dimension, right? Because we are looking at it over time. And in our case, the way the queries were defined, the aliases of the column names were all the names of the columns were month zero, month one. And ideally, that's how it should be. That's how it looks better. But whatever is the name of the column, you can give that, and accordingly, if you have started with a particular month of the year, then you can also decide how you're naming the columns. Since it was started from January, then it's easy to understand when it is starting and when it is ending. So these are the names of the columns. These you have to select as metrics, and these actually give the revenue. So you can also include something like, you can just edit it, and you can select something like month zero revenue, something like that. You can always name that. Remember, this is the built-in thing. So if you want to make any kind of major changes, it's always better to do it within the data source itself, right? Or either at the BigQuery level, or maybe in the data source within Looker Studio. And then you can also do some styling. If you click on styling, then you will be able to choose the different, the different columns. And for each of the different columns, you can have, you can choose to show the header, by the way, and you can select auto height, and you can choose to have different kinds of things, like, for instance, for each of the metrics, which are the different columns, by the way. And as you can see, all of them are a heat map format, right? So heat map format, you can choose what structure you want from here. If you don't want a heat map for a particular column, which of course there's no reason why you should be doing that. You have already chosen a heat map, but you can choose the colors from here, right? So this is what is available at the styling level. Again, this is just simplest visualization format. I just want to give you a head start as to how you can do this entire connection part, and then within Looker Studio, you can play around with all kinds of visualizations, right? So that is the main part of the process of this entire discussion. The last part that I just want to quickly touch upon is, of course, I showed you a couple of different versions. You can have customer retention, you can have LTV. So apart from the revenue, the customer revenue part, Looker Studio, Cohort Table that I showed in Looker Studio, you can have so many other versions of it, right? You can choose all kinds of metrics that can be calculated over time, and that you can reproduce in the form of a cohort analysis table. And so once that's done, though, I mean, what do you do with it? You present it to a stakeholder, and of course, as marketers, you need to analyze it and take decisions, right? So if you're a marketer and you're not very familiar with it, then follow along. So I'm just going to give you 3 quick ways you can read a cohort analysis table and actually take decisions from it. So these are sample tables, and as you can see, that obviously for Jan 21, suppose this is the recent date, that's why it's only the first month. So zero, again, a very similar format that we just saw there. Starting from zero, how much it is extending to, and you can see the number of customers here. I'm assuming this will be the number of customers, for instance, and for each of the first months, for these cohort ones, the yellow sort of rectangle shows the first month customer numbers for each of these individual cohorts. Okay. And if I go to the next one now, you'll see that the number of customers from this particular cohort, for instance, dropped off from the 3rd to the 4th month. And that's been the case pretty much for all these months in this dummy example. 60 to 30 for Jan 20. In Feb 20 as well, it dropped from, it just basically halved in the first 3 cases, as you can see. And it increased a bit again, but here it dropped again half, again dropped, again halved, again, almost less than half. So you can see that there's something going on. So this is how you basically read a cohort table, trying to understand relationships between months and across cohorts. And you will have to investigate that, okay, if you really want to carry on the retention, and you can see that the shading also gives that sort of reveals that. So you don't necessarily always need to look at the numbers. That's why heat maps are so useful, right? I mean, the heat map that got created here also will reveal similar sort of things. So I can't show you these direct numbers here, but it's going to be the same thing. I mean, you have to look at the numbers and take decisions based on that. So you can see that if you want to carry on the retention and you want people to retain for longer, then you will have to have to have some sort of intervention at this sort of a point where you see clear drop-offs in a major way, right, between the third and fourth months. And then there's a third way, which is to look at diagonally, and that actually gives you the same month. So if you're looking at July here, and this is the first month, but June is going to be the second month, right? And you can see that okay, uh, 24 was was here. It was 28, 24. So you're basically looking at July, and you are looking at the numbers corresponding to the previous months. So if you look at 17 to 25, then 10 to 18, 15 to 23, 10 to 19, 22 to 24. And so you can see that there's an increase in most cases, right, compared to June, compared to the previous month. Yeah. And then you will have to investigate why has this happened? Why is July suddenly such a good month? What had happened? Ideally, you should already have the answer with you. And if you know that there was some intervention, then it must have worked. Or if you think that this has not worked well enough, then you can also decide, okay, we need to up the ante. We need to take our game, sort of a level or a notch higher, and then you can take interventions accordingly. So yeah, I think cohort analysis tables unnecessarily can be made a little bit too complex at times, but they're not really complex, all right? They can be pretty easy to decipher. But um, yeah, getting them into the right place. You already have them in Shopify backend, but I just wanted to show in case you're considering Looker Studio. I'll be honest, I'm not a super fan of Looker Studio. I probably have spoken about it elsewhere on LinkedIn and other places maybe, and that's because it's relatively slow and it can be pretty it can really sort of have a hanging effect. Your computer can hang and all. Um, but that depends on your system to a certain extent. But in general, it takes time to load the data and all, and has got a lot of limitations as well. But of course, a huge plus point is that for all the range of functionalities of visualization, it's a free tool at the end of the day, and that's why a lot of businesses require that. They don't want to spend too much money in expensive visualization software, and it makes perfect sense, right? So varies from business to business to from use case to use case. So in your case, if you require this sort of a visualization, this is a good way to get started with it. And but yeah, even the Looker Studio is free. You still have two other places you would have to actually spend some money. So BigQuery, a data warehouse, and then the connector tool, which in this example, for instance, was Airbyte. So Airbyte, by the way, has a free version. So the cloud version, which has the storage functionality, therefore, is basically the one where you have to pay. But I believe that it has the free version. Again, I just have to cross check that, but I think yeah, it's possible to install it into your system, and you can get started with it without having to pay for the cloud functionality. So yeah, so this was the way that I suggested. There can be so many better ways of doing it. There are many considerations. By the way, by no means I'm suggesting this is the best, most optimal version of the query. There can be many better versions to do it. I'm more than happy to listen to suggestions, open to suggestions from all the data engineering and other experts that are there. So yeah, I'm exploring all of this and I just wanted to share it with the community. Hope you liked the video. If you have any suggestions, any questions, do let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.